have heard a little bit about already, as I've read my rationale for you guys. This unit is about identity and gender, reading through the Fight Club, Pride and Prejudice, and the short story Brokeback Mountain. Students will only be reading one of the two books, so they'll be pairing those against each other. They'll work in pairs in discussions in class, and we'll read the short story together as a class as a third final piece. So some context. My students are seniors in an IB language and literature class, just like Kelly's, at Rainier Beach High School, which is a few years, I think about almost 10 years behind Ingram in implementation of the IB program, so we're a later school in IB. We're still just getting our feet under us with IB. The class has an 11 to 8 male to female ratio, so it is male heavy. And my demographics are very, very similar to Kimmy's, except perhaps there is a switch of the African American and Black population and the Asian population. The Asian population still is very large. It's just probably second to the Black and African American population. Over 70% of our school population is on free and reduced lunch. In that class, I don't have the number on top of my head, but I think we have 2 or 3 students on the McKinney-Mento program. I know for a fact 1, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were 2 more. And then more than 20% of our school receives English language learner services, which is twice the average in the Seattle Public Schools, or more than twice actually, I believe. So we have a very high ELL population. There are several students in that classroom that have been put on the ELL program at some point in their education, but none currently receive ELL services. We call our school a minority-majority school. That's just a description of the fact that there are probably a couple dozen Caucasian students, which is worldwide, or in America, the majority. So it's a majority is the minority school. So my learning targets and standards, the targets are just basically, these are 2 of the more important targets. I can compare a selection of literature to another text, print or non-print, to gain insight into purpose and meaning of the text to back up my comparisons using evidence. So basically talking, text to text, as well as really getting that using text as evidence down again. Students will critique the words, phrases, and their multifaceted uses and their impact in our focus text through an argumentative essay. So the end product is an argumentative essay. 3 of the learning targets that I wanted to focus on are the reading literature standards 4, 6, and 7. So 4 is analyzing a case in which grasping a point of view requires distinguishing what is directly stated in a text from what is really meant, which is usually satire, sarcasm, irony, or understatement. So really looking at how those are used both in Fight Club and Pride and Prejudice. They're both quite prevalent. I started with 6, didn't I? 4 is determine the meaning of words and phrases they are used in text, including figurative and connotative meanings. Analyze the impact of specific word choices, meaning and tone, including words with multiple meanings or language that is particularly fresh, engaging, or beautiful. So it's not really, this is specifically geared towards the students who are reading Fight Club, because there is very vivid imagery and word use in that book. Like, it is very blunt what it wants you to see, and it's very, there's simple images that are easy to grasp. And then the final standard is analyzing multiple interpretations of a story, drama, or poem, and evaluating how each version interprets the source text, which is looking at the adaptions, the movies from Fight Club and Pride and Prejudice and Brokeback Mountain, as well as that the Lizzie Bennet Diaries of Pride and Prejudice. So the unit will culminate in a written task, an argumentative essay. Students will analyze the author's word choice, implicit and explicit meanings, tone, language, and the context of author, text, and reader. Students will be creating this as a final product out of a scaffold that they have already written theses, they've already written arguments, they've already written counterclaims. They're just doing this as a final, like, monster task for their senior year. The students have been really interested in this whole context of the author, the text, and the reader. We've talked about it several different times over the last couple of novels we've studied, and they're really interested in that. The skills students will use to fulfill these tasks are ones that they have previously been assessed on: theses, evidence, and counterclaim. The work they will do to create this final product will be a combination of discussion, class participation, research, and analysis. So class discussion with this group of students is very easy. Some students tend to go on tangents, and other students tend to make small things bigger than they are. But there are other students in the class that kind of help track those students. So it's really interesting to watch these class discussions because they kind of pull everybody back to the center, which is really cool to see. Like, the teacher barely has to do any talking. These kids are really interested in creating meaning together, which is really awesome to see. And they all, when given the opportunity, they all actively participate. I do have one student who, she's a Norwegian exchange student, and she she's not confident with her speaking English because she comes from a very rural town. So she prefers to write, but to me that's perfectly fine. That's a form of participation. The research will come in looking at our literary theory, just more research into what this Marxist feminist literary theory looks like in other texts as well as in ours, and what other people, critics, and scholars have to say about it. And then the analysis, obviously, of our focus texts. Students will walk away with a better understanding of time management skills in the writing process. Several times their writing has just been kind of like open, no real due date. Like, they write their extended essays, they write tasks for IB, but those, like, yes, they have a final due date, but they don't really have a start date. They kind of just ooze through the process, but this is a very structured process to kind of counteract that and help them realize what writing will look more like in college. And then we'll be talking about the Marxist feminist literary theory, which is developed out of their understanding already of the Marxist literary theory. So taking that discussion of the different power groups between upper class, lower class, who is and who isn't in a text, and also then engaging the gender question within that. So these students have completed other smaller tasks like this, and they're now combining to do this as a final course task. As I just stated, this is kind of a reiteration of what I just said. Okay, so the actual gateway activity.